and this is Talent Concierge 2023 Showcase Series. Now, coming up next, we have another phenomenal speaker. I'm sure you're going to recognize him from television and many of the other events and program that he is involved with. So allow me to give a proper introduction. So he is a nationally recognized actor, media guest, author, keynote speaker, and a television host. He has worked with some of the great entertainers like Whoopi Goldberg, Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Harrison Ford, Kelly Ripa, Adam Sandler, Carson Kressley, Bobby Flay, Anne Burrell, the Manning brothers for Oreo, Ron Howard, Sean, and Sean has been seen on air, an on-air host and media guest for MTV, Cablevision, United Stations, UPN, MMA, PBS Auction. Sean, I can't go on. This list is just way too long.
Oh, stop, Connie. You're embarrassing me. Come on. Oh, my goodness.
And he is also a member of the Screen Actors Federation of Television Radio Artists, where he has been a member since 1998. So, Sean, it's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So today we are talking about stage presence. And I loved what some of the other speakers have talked about, energy. And more importantly, it says right in the term, present. You need to be present. You need to be connected. You need to listen. So does everybody have stage presence? I think there are a lot of different factors that go into this. I think stage presence can be defined as a star quality, that it factor. As Connie mentioned, I've met many celebrities, and to be honest, not everybody came across as having a defined presence or having that it quality. But I think a presentation skill is something that anyone can acquire. And that's why I'm excited to be here and to be working with Connie as well, because that's what I can bring to your team, to your company, from small to big, no matter who you are, what your job is. You know, at some point, most of us, we have to communicate with other human beings. So we want to do it as well as we possibly can. And that is a skill set that really anyone can acquire. So how do we accomplish all this? You know, can you just, get charisma? Can it just be drawn from the air? You know, I think a lot of it just starts with being comfortable in your own skin. Now that's a big one, because you have to kind of own all of it and know where you are and just accept it. You know, if you feel like, okay, I overate this winter, which often I do, that's where you are. But it doesn't mean your story is any less valuable, or that people don't want to hear from you, or that you should shrink in any way to make other people comfortable. It's about claiming just who you are and what your story is to share. So that's where your authenticity comes from. We all have a past. We've all had struggles. We've all had good things. We've all had bad things happen to us. And that's really what connects us. And even sometimes, if you have to speak on behalf of someone else, often I've been hired as a spokesperson where I talk to the media, where I talk to the general public. And what I've realized, it's still always about being present and connected. So I could be giving a speech about a certain product and somebody walks by and I'll be like, yeah, that gentleman knows what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden you'll see that person just light up because you acknowledged them. You took a moment out of, what seemed like a scripted dialogue, which it may have been, to just say, hey, I see you, I hear you, I'm connected to you. And that is so much about public speaking, about the media. Like if you're talking to the media, you're going to be getting questions. So you're going to have to listen, because if you don't listen, how can you answer the question to the best of your ability? You may have a goal. You may want to share something great and exciting about your product, your team, your company. Great. So have that in the back of your mind. But if you're present, you'll be able to do it more in a relaxed manner and in a way that's authentic. Because if you don't believe what you're saying, it reads. Your audience won't be with you. They won't be following what you're saying either. So all of it is about coming from a genuine place, taking your time, being present for stage presence, and communicating. That's really what it's all about. And for me, motivational speaking is more often than not about just sharing something that maybe was painful or an obstacle from my past, but it led me to where I am today. It helped inform, shape, and improve who I am today and where I'm at. So the more passionate I am, or, I often had a distant relationship with my father. And I realized, well, by taking blame, for some of the abuse as a child and saying, I'm sorry, Dad, that I did not reach out to you, before he passed away, he said he loved me. And I'd never heard that before. But if I did not decide, okay, I want to take his defenses down. How do you take the defenses down of an individual or like maybe a team member? Sometimes the best answer is to blame yourself, because once you put the blame on you, the other person can't be defensive. They can't be guarded, or usually very often are not. And then it allows a new start, a new beginning, a new road for communications. And when I was thinking about stage presence, of course, my mind first went to celebrities when I heard the topic from Connie. And I'm like, oh, this is exciting because I've worked with many. But then I was thinking about it. It's like, well, who had that stage presence, that I met? And two come to my mind more than anybody else. So I'm going to go through the stories of my encounters with these celebrities that everybody pretty much knows, and then say how I think it really connected them to the audience and what made them so powerful. So my first one was from one of my idols, Oprah. Now, I grew up a poor kid in Central Florida in a trailer watching the Oprah Winfrey Show. And I prayed and I dreamed to, be in entertainment and to hopefully one day be a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Well, flash forward many years, and I'm working as a spokesperson at a trade show and also doing media for a company. And I found out the hotel I happened to be staying at in Chicago was the official hotel for the Oprah Winfrey Show. It was her farewell season, and that we could get tickets to see Oprah before I go to work. I was so excited. I was like, I can't believe this. I might be able to see Oprah. So I got tickets. And then we were actually kind of seat fillers because it was very last minute through the hotel concierge. So they had told us before going into the audience, rev up your excitement. Well, you don't need to tell me to rev up excitement. So I came running in, Oprah, screaming like a maniac. So of course, the warm-up person grabs me, puts me up on stage, and then they were playing music from the Black Eyed Peas for her farewell season, and it was blaring, and she's like, oh, get the audience to dance. Now, funny enough, I had done bar mitzvah dancing, where, if you don't know what that is, it's like a rite of passage for, kids, almost like a wedding for children and a coming of age for guys and girls, bar and bat mitzvahs. Anyhow, they would have me to help other people dance, which is like simple counts, clap and up and down. And so that's basically what I did with Oprah's audience. Then, because they were filming it, because it's the first year of the OWN network, they interviewed me. So now, all of a sudden, I'm on Oprah Winfrey stage, being interviewed not by Oprah, but by the warm-up person, warming up the entire audience. I was gobsmacked, and I had already at this point, worked on A Beautiful Mind with Ron Howard, as Connie had alluded to. And I've met other celebrities, Russell Crowe, of course, was in that movie, and I worked with him, in a small scene. Anyhow, I normally don't get starstruck. But growing up as a little kid and now a full-grown adult, Oprah came to me when I was going towards my seat, and I just stopped, stared at her, and I see her eyes, and she just looks so kind, so sweet. And what almost never happens to me, and maybe it's a bad thing to admit being a public speaker, I went blank. I did not know what to say. So I just said, of course, the dumbest thing that could come out of my mouth, I love you. And then Oprah, with her sweet little eyes, looked back at me and said, I love you too. And for this kid who always dreamed of meeting Oprah and for being on her stage, all of a sudden, a single little tear came down my face. And I felt like that old commercial, if anybody remembers of it, the Indian, and then there's pollution going on, and then the Native American, cries because of the pollution. That was me. And, now this is where all the stage presence comes in. Not only was she nice to this grown man who cried in front of her and blanked out, but Oprah repeatedly would thank during the taping her audience for being there. She had a woman who took her shoes from being sneakers to her Christian Louboutins, and she was like, oh, I have a shoe person. She's like, oh, that's what happens when you have your own show. She had done the show for 25 years. She knew her shoe person would be there. Why did she say it? Because she didn't want to seem like, she's mistreating some woman who's just dealing with her feet. Also, too, to acknowledge that, she's not uppity. She's aware that this isn't normal. She sees the audience. And she was just so kind and gracious to everyone that there is no way that anybody who was sitting in that audience wouldn't have a good thought about her. And now since then, living in New York City, just for fun, I've taken family and friends to see tapings of other shows. And I've seen celebrities who are quite the opposite, where they don't acknowledge the audience. They're mean to their fellow coworkers on, the mic, or whoever's producing the show, or whoever's talking to them over the intercom. So you can see a huge difference. But I think that's how Oprah, from a young woman of abuse in a relatively poor household, became one of the most powerful women in the entertainment industry. She gets it. She listens to others. She connects to others. She's in the moment. She knew she had a show to do. Me, her shoes and everything I mentioned had nothing to do with what the actual show was going to be. I believe David Arquette was the guest that day. But she still made sure to take time to connect with every single individual. And to me, that is what it's all about. It's connecting with your audience and reading the room and being able to shift that energy. Oprah made the energy of that room. I mean, it made me love her even more. Whether she really does love me or not, it might be questionable. But a part of me was sincere in my blank outness that I did love her. And then the second person, it's totally sassy and different, who I'd say really just owned the room, who I met, was Angelina Jolie. It was a last minute shoot. I was hired to play a SWAT team member. I'm normally a comedic actor, an MC, a host, a motivational speaker. So holding a gun isn't natural for me. So first of all, they give me a big gun to hold. They say, run in, and now you're going to grab Angelina Jolie. Okay. So, they say action. I go ahead and I do it. Well, afterwards, I thought about it. I was like, Angelina Jolie gets like $20 million a film. I'm some unknown guy to her. I looked at her and I was like, I'm so sorry if I grabbed you too tightly or too roughly. She just looked at me and was like, I'm used to rougher. And I was like, oh, no, she didn't. I thought it was like so sassy. And then props had joked with her because she was going to be handcuffed. It was all part of the scene. Oh, we don't have the fur cuffs. And again, she was sassy with them. She's like, oh, who says I like the fur ones? And meanwhile, she had a male assistant or nanny, with her kids off stage, where she would talk to them in between takes. And at the very end of the shoot, she looked at me and maybe a couple other people around me and asked if I was going to be going from Long Island to DC with her to continue the shoot. And I knew I wasn't. So I just said, well, not yet, but maybe you can make it happen. And she's like, I'll work on it. So just me, somebody with a very small role in a movie that she was the star of, she took time to acknowledge. But it wasn't just me. It was the entire room. It was the props department. There was an awareness that her kids were in the other room. The whole energy of the room was controlled by her. And it had, again, nothing to do with her job at hand. Her job at hand, at that point, she's a bloody mess. Her hair is all cut. She doesn't look like Angelina Jolie at all. It was a pretty traumatic scene, but she was able to go just from being natural, calm, her authentic self, right into character. I mean, and it just really showed to me that is the star quality. That is beyond stage presence. Now, maybe a presence like Oprah or, Angelina Jolie is a little bit harder and not attainable for everybody. But what is attainable for everybody is a great presentation skill set as well. None of us come out of the womb holding a script. It's all learned. It's all acquired, and most of our communication is done with our body language. So there's some very simple pointers, and I'm going to share with you all folks today about how to be a little bit better of a communicator with your audience or even in your own life. We can use our hands to emphasize, or like when I'm excited, or like, oh, stop, Connie. It shows your emotion. It shows where you're at. Energy, as the last speaker was saying, is contagious. It's all about energy as well. So, sometimes people will be like, what do I do with my hands? Where do I put my hands? Well, they're connected to your body. You use them to indicate what you need to indicate. If you clasp your hands, it's showing you're closed down. Same thing if you place, your clasped hands in front of yourself, or if you put your hands in your pocket, it's kind of showing that you're closed down. Same thing with your arms crossed like this. You never want to do that because, again, it's kind of either like a challenge or showing a disinterest in what the other people have to say as well. Now, something that I often don't have myself because I tend to be more animated and energetic, but stillness, pause, quiet. It can all be a power as well. If you think about it, a lion, the king of the jungle, Hakuna Matata, they're not running frantically before they hunt. They're just sitting, they're watching, they're observing, because they know they're the king of the jungle. They have the power. Even just as simple as being an actor, you know that people with real power, even if you watch the movie The Godfather, what have you, make you an offer you can't refuse. He's not yelling. He doesn't need to yell. He has real power. And that's, so stillness is a sign of power as well. And as our last speaker was saying as well, it's about knowing your energy. Are you more high energy like me, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you about when I met Oprah and when I met Angelina Jolie? Or are you somebody who's more serious and you're like, okay, I need to give this presentation. It's on a serious topic. It's on the latest in pharmaceuticals. But at the same time, you can connect with your audience, maybe make a joke if it's appropriate here or there as well. See if people are listening. Put out little simple respond cues like right, so people will say yes. That's also often a sales technique where you give them an opportunity to agree with you, and it's another way to connect with your audience as well. Sometimes when you lean forward as far as body language, it could show like you have a piqued interest. It's like, oh, well, what did you say? You're leaning in, you want to hear, you want to know about it. One thing I sometimes do, which I sadly enough thought was like not a good thing. I thought it was a little narcissistic of myself, to be honest. Sometimes if I find something funny or I know what I'm going to say, I laugh at my own jokes, or I'm almost laughing before I say it. It turns out it's a great way to bring people into the joke, because you're like, what's going on? What's funny? I want to hear it. I want to know about it. So it's another great thing, you can incorporate within your public speaking. And really, the most important thing is, what are you bringing to the table? It's you. That's all you have. You might do great at your job. You might know about your job, and that's great. So then if you're passionate about your job or just knowledgeable, that's now something that you can share with others. And you set the tone, you set the timing, you set the pace. You could tell probably, I noticed it myself because I was excited when I was talking about Oprah. I probably was like talking a little bit quicker and like, oh my goodness, and I can't believe this happened and then that happened. And now that I'm just trying to, communicate to everybody watching who I'd love to help, give a presentation and to give presentations for as well. It's about, teaching, and it's about sharing and going with my own experience and saying, hey, these are some easy tips that you can incorporate into the next time you need to give a speech, the next time you need to talk to someone as well. And of course, practice makes perfect. So, I'm sure even Oprah wasn't Oprah overnight. It was a process. I know she started in local news, and then really with her talk show, when she shared her own struggle with abuse, is really what catapulted her to stardom, because it's very interesting that, most of her audience would be wealthy white women, and she wasn't that. But she was able to connect because we all have pain. We all have trauma. We've all experienced something terrible, some more than others. And Oprah was one of the first people on national TV, especially in a position of power, to share her struggle. And it just bonded her and her audience for, the next 25 years until I saw her on that last season, And it's okay if you lose your train of thought. The main thing is not to do lots of pauses. At the end of the day, if you're giving a presentation or a speech or talking about a product, no one knows what's coming next. Only you. So you can't make a mistake because only you know what is to follow. Now, of course, a lot of times there can be legal and you might have to watch how you're phrasing certain things. So there are exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, if you're not having to say things phrase by phrase exactly for legal reasons, you're golden, because everybody's on a journey with you and you're leading that journey. And if you're scared about public speaking, you are not alone. Recently, I was talking to a friend who had to be a moderator for some lawyers, and he was a nervous wreck. And I was shocked because he's very outgoing. He used to be friends with an assistant of Joan Rivers, and he has a very bold, bombastic personality. So I was like, Kyle, why are you afraid? And so I gave him a lot of these same hints. Well, it turns out, what's the number one fear of all people? It is public speaking. And funny enough, what's the second biggest fear of all people? Death. So public speaking for most people is scarier than death. How crazy is that? So really, you can do it. It isn't that scary. Trust me. I hope some of the tips, I just gave are helpful, to you, and to know if you are a little bit nervous, you're not going to be alone, and the more you focus on your audience, the more you're present for your stage presence, the more you try to connect with others, the more it takes you away from you. And before you know it, who knows? Maybe you'll be the next Oprah or Angelina. Thank you for your time.
Sean, that was amazing. Now, I do want to say, Akuna Matata, I was waiting for you to break into song.
I can dance, but I can't sing, so you don't want me to. That one talks a little bit, so I might not be so horrible, but overall, you don't want
it. But it's great. I mean, you've really worked with some of the greats in the industry. And again, even as a spokesperson for a lot of the auto dealers that you work with. So I want to go off script a little bit, and I want to ask you, what has been your most rewarding project that you've worked on?
Oh, wow. There's been so many. I'm trying to think of what would be the number one for me. I would probably say one of the more rewarding ones was probably the most difficult. Looking for more hosting reel than anything, and I never did cook, so I figured, okay, I'll get free cooking lessons. I was on Worst Cooks in America, and it was 12-hour days, and we were all clumped together in like the same room, and we weren't fed regularly, but it was such a challenge to like do a reality show, to learn that, oh, the producers might want me to be the villain on this show, but I'm funny. I'm like, I don't want to be mean to people. I was like, no, I'm not going to be mean. And then at the end of the day, it all worked out because I was authentic to myself. Even funny enough, because they did separate us from Ann Burrell and Bobby Flay in the bathroom. Bobby's like, good job. I'm like, thanks. So he was a nice guy as well, but I didn't have a lot of time with him. But to me, just seeing that I was very authentic to myself. I didn't give into the direction that the producers wanted me to give into because I didn't see any reason to be mean over making eggs or be catty about like a steak cooking competition. I'm like, no, let's try to be me. Let's be funny. Let's try to enjoy this. And honestly, I used to store my headshots in my oven. So in New York, for the longest time, now food prices, as we all know, with inflation, are through the roof. However, back in the day, $10 a day, I could get a meal almost like anywhere, and I didn't have a need to cook. So I really didn't know what I was doing. And they're like, oh, here's a food processor, figure it out. Oh, now you're hand pulling noodles, because who doesn't do that? Making Chinese food. But at the end of the day, what I wanted reflected was reflected, and it was all just because I was true to myself. So I think it was a very big learning experience and kind of a turning point, as far as how I realized how reality TV works and how authenticity will always prevail, as I was kind of sharing earlier with the audience.
Great. So with the work that you do in corporate, who would you say is your ideal audience, and what do you want them to take away from your message?
Sure. I feel the main thing to take away from the message is to be yourself, to embrace yourself, to know that we're all on a journey together. And I tend to focus whatever I'm writing for whoever I'm writing it for. So for instance, during the pandemic, Virtual School Assembly had me or wanted me to inspire children to overcome being at home during COVID, during lockdown. And so I addressed being bullied because it was something that I had experienced and I didn't know how I was going to get out of it and if I would, and that I was beaten severely and I felt no escape. And then all of a sudden I saw a commercial for High School of Performing Arts. I auditioned, I got in, and it was a whole huge turning point. And that if I can do that and if I can find the way out, we all can. So for me, that was communicating my message for Virtual School Assembly because that's what they wanted to hear. For Pride Month, it's all about, loving yourself, being proud of yourself, even if, like I had alluded to, my own father didn't seem like he had loved me until I took blame for his actions, but then that was healing for me as well. So I tend to try to create an environment and also speeches, presentations to meet your needs, to meet the needs of my client, whoever they may be.
I love that. I could go on and on asking you so many more questions, but we do need to go. But one final question I do have is, how's mom?
Oh, well, I love that lady. She's my favorite diabetic. and she's doing so good. And like, I know you mentioned it's more as like career, but one thing that I was very proud of, about myself, that I was able to take her on a Mediterranean cruise for her 70th birthday, and now she's
Nice.
79. And like she'll still mention it to this day. She'll be like, the Spanish steps, I don't understand. They're just steps. Why are they famous? I don't know. So some
And
of my
there's
quirks I think I get from her, but she's doing well. And thank you so much, for asking, Connie. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome, but I know she's a big part of everything that you've done. So Sean, I want to thank you for being here. And for all of our meeting planners listening, again, whether it's a corporate event or whether it's a public event or somebody that you just want to show up and be your spokesperson, Sean Bennett is that guy. You want to learn
Yeah.
more about him, yes, because he is that guy. So check him out. Give us a call at tcaa.co. Email us at hello@tcaa.co, and we'll make that connection for you. And we'll get Sean on your next stage. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. You've been wonderful, dear.